come to an accident or to someone's home after they've been called, one of the first things they do is check for vital signs, see if there's a pulse, see if the heart is beating. If the person is able to move, they check blood pressure. How many of us here today, or maybe you might know someone, that shows few vital signs in life? Now, their hearts may not have flat lines, but they don't get excited about much. No song in their heart. There's no joy, no enthusiasm, no passion in life. You can see it in their eyes. You can hear it in their words. You can see it in the way they live. The fire is gone. Life in general has caused them to stop living and to only exist. Many years ago, many decades ago, Benjamin Franklin wrote that many people die at age 25, but they're not buried until they're 85. You know, it's easy to slip into, I guess, what I call a zombie lifestyle. A lifestyle in which we stop living and only exist in life. You know, one of the most popular shows on TV, I've only watched it one time. I watched it and I didn't really care for it, called Walking Dead. Probably not too many of you have watched that show. It talks about, the show features what's called zombies. And I'm not into zombies at all. I don't know if you know what a zombie is. It's I guess, a form of a human being that just walks around and they're dead. Well, this show is very successful for some reason. I read an article, I don't know, it's been a year or so ago, that talks about the TV show The Walking Dead and why is it so popular? Why does it catch people's attention? Why do so many people watch it? It said that it reflects American culture. There's many people walking through life. They're lifeless. They don't have meaning. They don't have purpose. Other to it than to exist and to get what you can. Literally the way zombies live. In The Walking Dead, there's a few people trying to survive, trying to live their life without being consumed by the zombie world they live in. Many people in the world today are battling discouragement and fear and feel hopeless. Believe that the best years of their life, or maybe the best years of their country, or even the best years of the church are in the past. And when I hear that type of mentality, when I see that type of mood, I can't help but to think that Jesus told us in John chapter 10, verse 10, that he came to give us abundant life. You know, the words abundant life suggest a life full of flourishing, thriving, not lived in fear, not limited by your environment, not limited by your circumstances. It's a life that has the presence of the resurrected Jesus fully alive in us. Way too many Christians experience just the opposite. I don't know how many times over the years I've met Christians that have a spirit of hopelessness, of discouragement and frustration, powerlessness and bitterness and unhappiness in their life. Matter of fact, I've even met my share of preachers in that situation. What causes people to withdraw from abundant living? What causes a Christian to not be counted in a life of abundant living? Well, there's some contributing factors. Life can beat us up. You know, first of all, when you watch the news, all you hear is bad news, right? I've almost given up watching the news. I mean, if you want to get depressed, if you want to get discouraged, watch the news, right? All you see is crime, wars, scandals, disasters, terrorists, corruption. If it isn't bad news, it doesn't get reported. Very rarely do you watch a news program that just features good news and positive things. Another thing that causes people to many times to stop living is disappointments in life. You know, we start out with big dreams and we have big hopes when we're young. We dream about a great job, a wonderful marriage, great kids, a nice home. And then the golden age of retirement. But then job and careers don't turn out the way we hope. We have financial struggles and difficulties. People dream of having a wonderful marriage, a great life. But then the guy you married is not the dream guy you thought he was going to be, or the wonderful dream woman. It's interesting, whenever I do weddings, I always bring especially the young couples into, they want to get married, and I want to bring them in for pastoral counseling, premarital counseling. And I always love to watch their enthusiasm. You know, I've never done a wedding where the couple didn't have high expectations, high hopes. The thrill of being with the one they love. They just imagine it's going to be magical, it's going to be wonderful, I'm going to be living with the person that I've loved and desired to be with. And then all of a sudden, kids come and bills arrive and imperfections begin to manifest themselves and in-laws, etc., etc. And about after 7 or 8 years, humdrum sets in. Life doesn't turn out the way you thought it would. So many people just give up. They lose their passion in life. Another thing that causes people to get frustrated and stop living are failures pile up. Now, some people think failure is final, and when they fail, they never try again. You know, one of the most interesting persons I've ever read, I like to read biographies. You know, one of the things I guess I've done all my life is I always like to read biographies of great people. And so I've learned all my history, and I've read just countless biographies. But one of the most interesting persons I've ever read about is Thomas Edison. After I read his biography, I went down here to Fort Myers to visit his house. I've been there a couple of times. But he's an interesting guy. Edison failed 99.9% of the time. Now, that's a lot of failure, wouldn't you think? He's the one that had the famous quote that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. But Thomas Edison saw failure not as some kind of final thing that would discourage him and cause him just to quit. Instead, Edison saw failure as motivation to keep trying until you get it right. You know, when I read that book, it was so inspiring because here's a guy that failed so many times, but failure didn't cause him to give up. It caused him to try harder. And you know what? Until almost the day he died, he was continually in his laboratory, failing, looking for solutions, though. Painful experiences can cause us to lose our passion for life. All of us experience painful experiences in our life, things that sap the life out of us. I mean, nothing is more hurtful than rejection, betrayal, injustice, loss of a loved one, a job, a failed relationship. You know, life continues to go on, though. Zig Ziglar, who is a popular motivational speaker, I think he's still alive, he says that everything that happens to you in life has the potential of making you either bitter or better. And then he adds, the choice is yours. And then finally, one of the things that could rob people of an abundant life, a Christian, any person. And we see this story here in John chapter 5, and that is a person's health. Jesus in this story is attending a mandatory feast in Jerusalem. And while he's there, he decides to visit a place called Bethesda. The word Bethesda means the house of outpouring mercy. This is a place where the sick would gather in the city each day, the sick, the crippled, the afflicted. They'd gather every day at the pool. Today, I guess we would call it the hospital. As a matter of fact, there's a picture of it. David loaned me that picture. Just imagine water being in there, okay? You don't see it now, but just imagine the water being there. Bethesda had a couple of mineral baths that were therapeutic for those with physical ailments. It's kind of a place where the sick and the hurting could go and the crippled and people that had all kinds of physical ailments. And the legend was that an angel stirred the water, and whenever the angel would stir the water, the first one in the pool would get healed of their disease. So you can imagine the competition around the pool as the sick gathered around. The first one in was the one that got healed. So while Jesus was visiting this place where sick people gathered, Bethesda, he saw a guy who was probably a long-term patient. He probably spent many years visiting this place, probably every day. Matter of fact, Jesus said he'd been sick for 38 years, probably the bulk of his life since he was, it doesn't say how old he was, but I would say almost all of his life he'd been afflicted with some type of physical ailment. He couldn't walk. And Jesus walks over to this guy who had been probably at the pool for decades, and he says to him, he says, "Do you want to be made well?" Well, most of us would probably assume that the answer is obvious, right? You would probably assume that the guy would say, "Of course I want to get well." What kind of question is that? I've been stuck here in this ailment, in this affliction, sitting here by the pool for 38 years. I can't walk. I have to rely on other people. It's kind of a miserable existence. Of course I want to get well. Sure, the man had dreams. I can imagine that guy sitting by that pool every day, not able to walk, not able to live a normal life. I'm sure he had dreams. I'm sure he had hopes. I'm sure he thought about the day, maybe one of these days, if I can just get in the pool and get healed, maybe I can get a job, I can have a family, I can live a normal life. Be independent. I won't always have to depend on other people all the time. The answer to the question seems obvious to us. So why did Jesus bother asking the question? Why did he bother walking up to this guy and say, "Hey, you want to get well?" Could it be that maybe Jesus saw something about this man that isn't obvious on the surface? Maybe something that we don't see as we read the text? I think maybe his reply to Jesus suggests something. In verse 7, the man who had been there for 38 years, who had been sick for 38 years, he answers Jesus' inquiry about does he want to get well, and he answers this inquiry by literally saying, "I can't." Then he begins to offer reasons why he can't get well. Jesus says, "Do you want to get well?" The guy kind of says, "Well, no, I can't. And here's why. First of all, he says any effort he tries to make to get better is useless. He says, every time I try to get in the pool, someone beats me to it. I'm never first. Sometimes I'm third, sometimes I'm second. Close only counts in horseshoes, right? Other people have an advantage over me. I've tried and I tried, but every time I fail, someone else always gets all the breaks. Someone else always has all the luck. So he had just basically given up trying anymore. He'd given into hopelessness. He'd given into despair. He didn't even put forth an effort. Didn't really help. Secondly, he says that other people just don't care. He blamed others for his predicament. He says, there's no one around me who cares enough to help me get into the pool first. If I could just get in the pool first, if somebody would just help me, I'm all on my own. When I do try, someone else always steps ahead of me. I'm a helpless victim, and nobody really cares about me. A while back, I read some quotes by Bill Glass. I don't know if you ever heard of him or not. He's a former all-pro defensive end for the Cleveland Browns. And when he retired from the NFL, he became a prison evangelist when he retired. And Bill Glass says there's 4 things that you can do when your life is hurting. There's 4 things you can do when you are experiencing pain and hurt. He says whether it be emotionally pain or physical pain or spiritual pain. The first thing that people do, not everybody, but some people do when they are experiencing pain or hurt in their life, is they nurse their hurts. They lean on it. They use it as a way to get sympathy and excuse their poor performance in life. You might have heard people do that before. Some people curse their hurts. They get bitter. They get angry over their affliction. They live their lives filled with anger and give up on life. A lot of these people are hard to be around because they're grumpy. Some rehearse their hurts. These are people who almost seem to enjoy their pain. Their identity is wrapped up in their hurt or their pain. They meditate on it. They are constantly telling other people about it. These are the kind of folks, when you ask them how they're doing, they spend 20 minutes telling you. Use it to get sympathy and attention. And then fourth, Bill Glass says there's the biblical response to pain and hurt. And he says that is to reverse it. Turn your weakness and pain into strength and learn from it, grow from it, and become conformed to the image of Christ through it. If you want to learn how to deal with trials, just read the book of James. You know, whenever I've taught on the book of James, people always like raise their eyes like, whoa. I mean, James talks about consider it a joy when you have trials and problems. And then he says the reason so is because it produces strength. It produces maturity. Most of us don't think about that when we're having trials and problems, do we? We just kind of hope they go away. But look at how Jesus handles this crippled man in this passage. He gives him an opportunity to be cured. It's interesting, when you read this passage, Jesus doesn't show lots of sympathy. He doesn't say comforting words to the guy. He just simply says to this man who had been crippled for 38 years, he simply says to him in verse 8, he says, stand up, take up your mat, and walk. Instead of trusting in the pool for your healing, Jesus says, trust in me. He had to do what Jesus said to do. You know, he could have sat there and begin once again to run down his list of why he can't be healed, why he can't stand up. He could have given excuses. But instead, he did what Jesus told him to do. And that changed his life. If there's anyone here today who has hurts and pain, you're walking through life without passion, without purpose. You're walking through life with discouragement, no hope, demoralized by life. Maybe you're battling sickness. Maybe you're battling poor relationships in life, loneliness, feeling bad, feeling discouraged, under financial burdens and stress. You know, there's a lot of things that the world can throw at us to discourage us. Maybe you're angry. I don't know. Maybe you're struggling with sin in your life. You know, there's times when sin comes into our life and we grant its access to our life, and all of a sudden, after a while, it becomes bondage to us. We become entangled in it. We can't escape it. We feel guilt. We feel shame. We can't break free because it's got a hold of our life. This causes shame. It causes discouragement. It causes us to feel terrible about ourselves. I guess the question I would ask you today is, do you want to get well? Do you want to overcome these things that get you down? If you want to get well, then you got to do what Jesus says to do. He told the guy at the pool of Bethesda, he says, to pick up your mat and walk. The guy did. You have to ask Jesus, what does he want you to do? I've always been a firm believer that when I ask the Lord a question, he'll answer it. If you have struggles in your life today, if you're whatever it is that's getting you down, whatever it is that's sapping the passion out of your life, whatever it is that's that's causing your Christian faith to seem flat. If there's sin that's got a hold of your life, then I would just ask the Lord, what do you want to do? What do you want me to do? And then I would encourage you to whatever he says to do, then respond to it. Don't just pass it off. If you want to be set free, if you want to be given abundant life, if you want the chains to be broken that are binding you and holding you down, ask the Lord, and then whatever he says, do it. I believe Christ and the Spirit of God has an individual message for each and every one of us when it comes to how he wants to deal with our lives, and whatever things in our life hold us back and afflict us and cause us to lose our passion and vitality and abundant living that he came to give us through his Spirit. Let's bow our heads for prayer this morning. And I would encourage you today, if you have whatever need you have, sometimes people just kind of hold it in. They don't want to, they don't want to bear too, or they don't want to reveal too much. But you know what? You can reveal it to Christ. You don't have to tell me anything, but you can tell it to the Lord. Whatever it is that has a hold of you today, discouragement, frustration, anger, bitterness, the pain of maybe relationships, or maybe sin that has got a hold of your life. I don't know, whatever it might be. I don't know what it is, but probably God does. I'm sure he does. I just want to encourage you to don't live that way any longer. Don't let whatever is holding you down, whatever is keeping you bottled up. If you want to get well, then do what he says to do. Father in heaven, these are your people here today, Lord. You love each and every one of them. You care about whatever it is they're struggling with. And Lord, I don't know what, I know when people gather in a room like this, they bring in here with them into your presence, Lord, many things that they're dealing with. Could be family issues. Could be issues with kids, grandkids, financial issues, a pain or hurt from the past, a betrayal, unforgiveness. It could be physical problems and sicknesses that just has sapped the vitality out of life because it's just a constant struggle. Lord, people come in, they live with so many things. We try to manage them. We try to literally control them ourselves and deal with it ourselves. Lord, I just pray for your people, Lord, if they want to get well, just pray, God, that they will look to you as the solution, as the cure, as the remedy. And I just pray, God, that whatever it is you reveal to them through your Spirit, as you speak to every one of them, as they hopefully lift that up to you and take it to the cross. Lord, I pray that whatever you say, they'll do it. Because, Lord, you are the one who will set us free. You are the one who will encourage our hearts. You're the one who will heal whatever it is in our life that needs to be healed. So I just pray now in Jesus' name that the power and the presence of the Spirit of God would rest upon this group of people sitting out here today. And I pray, God, whatever it is that may be struggling, maybe just a handful of people in here, that today would be the day that they would release that to you and listen to your voice and do whatever the Spirit says to do. Do it in the name of Jesus, we pray now. In his name.